It's 2016, and this world is headed for a disaster of biblical proportions.
What do you mean biblical?
I'm talking fire and brimstone falling down from the skies.
Rivers of seas are boiling.
Donald Trump running for president.
Human sacrifice. Dogs and cats living together.
Madness. Sheer hysteria.
And there's female Ghostbusters. Hello again. It is the Beardy and the Baldy. I am the Baldy.
That makes me the Beardy.
That does make you the Beardy. And we finally, I'm actually very excited for this review because we have not been able to talk shop about this since Thursday night. We saw the 2016 edition of Ghostbusters, directed by Paul Feig and starring the new female cast.
Yes. And I wanted to just put this right out there at the beginning. This is not a continuation. This is not the next chapter. This is a full-on, legitimate, to the definition, reboot of the franchise.
Mm-hmm. Reimagining, or what? Yeah, reboots a good one as well.
Because the way I define reboot is it goes back to the core basics and starts over. So even though you see a lot of the original cast listed in this movie, they all have cameos as completely different characters. I don't think that's really a spoiler. That's just something, so none of those characters are back as their original castings from the 84 original. So
yeah. But instead, we have Melissa McCarthy, and we have Kristen Wiig, and Leslie Jones, and Kate McKinnon this time saving the world, which is pretty sweet.
And Thor.
And Thor, yeah, Thor showing up. And he gave me one of the biggest laughs of the movie, and I'm pretty sure everyone in the theater thought I was nuts because I was the loudest person laughing.
I'm pretty sure I was laughing right there with you.
I just, his one joke, which I guess we won't try to go spoiler heavy on this one.
I mean,
little light spoilers, mild spoilers.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there is a joke that he did. The visual gag in his explanation of it, just I was laughing so hard that I'm sure. Yeah, his logo designs were killing me. But anyway, so we have Thor, who is the himbo of the group, if you want to call him that. Kevin.
Sweet Kevin.
You want to just pat him on the head and give him a coloring book?
I will say, while we're on the point of Chris Hemsworth, this role is the definition of breaking stereotypes. I mean, he kind of did it in the Vacation movie last year. But just seeing him break out of the typical alpha male role.
Oh yeah.
It was sheer delightfulness. Delightful. I'm using it. I'm running with it.
Go for it.
It was even better than I expected from the trailers. So before we really get into it, though, maybe let's see. We did our kind of like retro review a couple weeks ago about the original Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up with it, so I didn't have as much a vested interest in the original as much as Sean did growing up. So we kind of both went into this. I was just looking for a good, entertaining movie with, a franchise I'm somewhat familiar with, whereas for you it was a little bit more of a way to think. So you said you were a little more cautiously optimistic.
I was cautiously optimistic leading into it, just because Sony, your promo people, I don't know who is in charge of that department with whoever cut the trailers and who is actually trying to put this out there for people to enjoy it and see they're getting a decent product. But let them go. I mean, not to quote a Disney movie here, but geez, I mean, the previews, while I didn't personally have a huge problem with these previews, I didn't have a problem with any of the casting and stuff leading up to this movie, but you're not helping people to want to go to the theater to see this movie with how it was promoted, as far as
between this and the initial Star Trek Beyond trailer, which I personally didn't have any problems with either of them. Neither of them necessarily made the movies themselves look that attractive. If there were movies I was like, I'm going to see anyway, but like the initial trailers for both of these just kind of were like, That said, I think what you see in the trailer for this, most of the stuff that I didn't, like I said, the trailer itself was not good, but it didn't make me not want to see the movie.
Yeah.
And everything I saw in the trailer, I still enjoyed by the time I saw it in theatrical cut of the movie.
Yeah. It comes from the whole problem of there are so many people out there that are all about this is ruining my childhood to remake this movie, and the whole idea of, you know, we're not continuing with a third movie for the male Ghostbusters, we're now going into female territory. And for me, I'm sorry, I mean, I love the first movie, I enjoyed the second one. The minute that Harold Ramis passed away, I did not need a third movie whatsoever, because if you can't get the original four guys together in the same room for at least one scene, if they do a third movie, I'm completely fine with them not going back to the guys anymore. Technically, if you want to be really annoying about it, they had the video game come out a few years back, probably close, it's going on 10 years practically that the video game came out. That is your third movie. And it pretty much goes back to some of the storylines left over from the first movie. You have all four of them doing the voice cast in that one. I'm good to go. That was a great send-off for these characters that I grew up loving, and I got to be one of the guys in that movie, in that video game. So in the case of this, I was like, you know what? Let's just see what happens. I mean, there's no harm in that. There's some reboots that did gangbusters, like Batman Begins leading into Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. There's some that didn't do so hot, like Amazing Spider-Man, which is a Sony property. But I honestly, in this case, I gotta say Sony actually, they won me over here. So, yeah.
Like, I went in just hoping to be entertained for an hour and 45 minutes or whatever it was. And I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was hilarious. I thought the storytelling was great. I thought, I know a lot of people, some of the complaints I heard from people who didn't necessarily weren't against the idea of the movie, but you know, they're complaining about how some of the characters maybe portrayed certain stereotypes or cliche characters and all that. But when you actually meet these characters and see their stories and all this stuff, and they kind of explain things, even just through the natural interactions with each other, it's like, oh, okay, that explains this. So that's not at all what I would have taken from the trailer. And I back to the whole ruining your childhood thing. I mean, if your childhood is that fragile that someone doing something new with the concept ruins your childhood, you might need to go seek professional help. Because, and I'm not trying to make light of that. I mean, in some ways I am. But, okay, I grew up with Transformers. This is just going to be a little sidetrack.
Sure.
The cartoons don't really hold up as an adult. I still have the whole series. Every now and then I'll pop a disc in and watch one or two, and it's just like good guys versus bad guys, hurrah.
Nobody gets
moving
killed.
On. You know, the movie definitely did something different, the animated movie, but the Michael Bay movies, they don't ruin my childhood. If anything, they make me want to go back and watch the old stuff more. So if you're not even going to take the chance on this movie, don't say it ruined your childhood. That is the weakest excuse. If you want to be upset because you don't like certain things about it, okay. Give a valid opinion, go see the movie, then say what you think.
Yeah.
So going into it, I think this movie got completely side-railed by online armchair warriors or keyboard warriors or whatever that were just totally like, forget all that. If you like humor, action, and good story and good pacing, I think this movie hits all of those things. I didn't get bored once. It moved well. Everything just fit really good. I mean, there's one little joke that I personally didn't like, but it was such a minor thing. I didn't even bother throwing it into the video what it was, because that way, if it's not something that bothers you, I'm not going to point it out.
Yeah, and I mean, our very first video was, for me, it's still that one was our epic rant of crazy on that one. And, you know, I had my biggest problem with Batman v Superman was just the way that Superman was portrayed. Now, I kept thinking to myself, okay, how can I go into this review where they reboot an entire franchise and not feel like I'm being a hypocrite because I bitched and moaned so much about Superman and how that was presented in the new movie versus a movie like this where they're rebooting from the ground up, basically, and establishing a whole new reality. And I thought about it, and it's like part of the problem of that versus this is Superman is a character that is a constant character.
Yeah.
In the case of this new movie, I'm not looking at another actor and another director saying, well, Pete Venkman now is going to act this way because I think it should be this way, and it was never shown in the other movies, and we have someone now coming in to play a character that everyone knows for 32 years now, and it suddenly is not anything close to what you were hoping the character would be. In this, we have a whole new slate of characters that you get to welcome and hopefully enjoy, and I enjoyed them a lot. I wasn't even sure. I had a feeling watching the previews that Kate McKinnon was going to end up being my favorite, because she just, in the previews, was a joy to watch, and I left the theater cheering Holtzman, and that's her character.
Me too.
She ended up being like the gem of the movie for me, to be honest. But Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, I was like, I don't know. I wasn't feeling the chemistry in the previews when I saw it, but when you see it in the movie, I got to admit, Melissa McCarthy might be my second favorite Ghostbuster right now.
She's
and that is amazing to actually admit for me at this moment.
Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy's characters are kind of like the heart and soul of the team, and it's really interesting because the one thing I will say about the previews is that they don't give away a lot of the actual story between the characters.
No,
it's a lot of
hinted.
moments. Yeah,
there's
it's
a couple
hinted,
quick.
At least in the trailers I've seen. So, they did a really good job, I think, of keeping a lot of that back. Maybe at the sacrifice of the quality of the trailer in itself. They did break one of my cardinal rules for trailers, which I'm sure they're all paying attention to. My cardinal rules is don't show anything from the last 20 or 30 minutes unless you can tell it's not. Now, there's a moment, and I know this was blown up all over the internet months and months ago, you kind of get a reveal of who the main villain or creature is in the trailer. Like, that's a big no-no. That was a big... Who let that person edit that into the clip?
Well,
and
who
let all
let
the
them
toys out that far in advance?
Who let them edit it to begin with is the thing, because
Then again, you get some trailers that look amazing and then the movies are awful. Sucker punch.
Yeah. I still have PTSD.
But yeah, Ghostbusters. I'm with you on Holtzman. She was awesome. The only other thing I've seen her in was an SNL skit where who's the actress in 10 Cloverfield Lane? Is that Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
Yeah.
I think it's her, or is it Brie Larson? Is like in this group. She's pregnant and she's in a group with other moms, and they all have like the short haircut, and they all talk about like the. And she was one of the other moms, like
Okay.
It was this funny kind of like mom joke skit, and I don't know, it was funny. That's the only thing I've actually seen her perform in.
She also on Saturday Night Live was in a skit about alien abduction with Ryan Gosling, and she managed to make him break character more than once.
That's
in that
fantastic.
He was literally like they were at desks like at a school, and he had to lean over the desk more than a few times to compose himself and get back into character. And she was on the entire time. She did not break character, and it's sort of like this. I'm one of those people that when I want to see a movie leading up to it, I'll watch the critic reactions, because it kind of gets me, like, either I'll get defensive and be like, I want to make my own decision, or I'll be like, that's really cool, somebody I respected just, in the case of this, she's like a 50-50 split from what I heard, and I mean, I'm actually kind of sad by that, because she really was. She was this shot in the arm of energy that never was in a single Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
And some were like, oh, she's a cartoon character and stuff. Well, it's like, I'm just going to admit this. From the beginning of this movie, I was talking to Jesse about this a little bit earlier. From the beginning of this movie, from the dialogue of the guy who is the... He does a tour of a mansion with a group of people. And when you hear his dialogue, you can tell this is not the reality of 1984 New York of the first Ghostbusters. It's setting the stage for this being a hyper-reality and turning it into a whole different deal than what you expected. And there's going to be a lot more like spoken jokes, and there's going to be a lot more of like cruder humor in some respects. And if you don't catch on to that from the get-go, then characters like Kate are just going to end up, falling flat for some people, I guess. But if you can accept that, you go into it and it's an enjoyable time.
Like, Holtzman's delivered, like, she's so dry and sarcastic through the whole thing. Like, she's almost deadpan through most of the movie.
Yeah.
And I love characters like that. But then when she starts talking about, she's like the engineer of the group. So she's kind of, in a way, kind of the Egon, if you will, right? Because isn't he the one that kind of developed most of it? It's been a while since I watched the film.
No, he's the one that you see working on a lot of the equipment in the movie.
And she's like, she gets like excited about it in the way, you know, someone who's got like 30 cats gets excited about telling you the names of all of them and the different personality. Like, she loves this piece of equipment. Oh, this one's got this kind of finicky personality. And it's great. And the way she segues those into kind of the little, not montages, but like the weapons tests and stuff, like those sequences were fantastic. And she's just, and I know a lot of people I saw were like rolling their eyes or whatever at the hat and wig joke. But when that still made me laugh in the theater when that hit, even though I knew it was coming. Like, it just, is it too much? Is the hat? You know, it's just because she was such a genuine character. And same with, like as we said, the first two, Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig, and then Patty was awesome.
Leslie Jones.
She was just such, again, like another kind of really like joyful, fun. Like, all of these characters were fun. On for different reasons. I'm like, I want to hang out with these people in real life.
Yeah, they didn't fight for screen presence. That was the thing that I thought was really cool. Whereas in the first one, you kind of had Venkman was the guy, and he almost could steal the show, and the others were kind of like second banana to him no matter what. In this, there wasn't a true character like that was a standout. I mean, I guess Patty technically could be close to that in a sense, because she was more the mouthy, verbal one than the other ones in some ways. But even she had like she had almost the stereotypical streetwise New Yorker black woman vibe about her, but she had a lot of genuineness about her as well. And she
there's
also,
a lot deeper explanation to that personality.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that her function in it. Like, obviously she's the comparison to Winston, but the thing is, like, they gave her way more to do and way more screen time than they ever let poor old Winston get in the first movie. And, you know, like, to a lot of fans, he's almost like a non-entity character, whereas each of these women have their own, this is who they are. Honestly, like, Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, for me, almost were kind of like one character almost, in a sense, because they're tied together in that way.
Yeah, but, and they even teased that with the joke, because, you know, they both like the "let's go" or whatever. Yeah, you know, and they're like, "Oh, did you want to say it? No, you can say it." So it's like our Star Wars.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, when you know somebody, you're comfortable with moments like that happen, and it's genuine. And the way they did that, I thought,
and
was
it's
fun.
like, clearly they were kind of the focus characters for the story arc. Yeah. But it felt like the story also let all the other characters, like even Kevin got, I think, more screen time than Janine did.
Oh, yeah.
And he's, again, he's his own character, lovable, idiotic character that he is. And I mean that in the best of ways.
If they make a sequel, I can't wait to see what they have him do there. Because the moments he had in this one alone are, like I said, I was laughing the hardest through some of his stuff.
And for all the people, I've seen people like saying how like it's so like sexist to put him in that role, and I'm like, really? Of all of the idiotic female secretaries they've put in movies, they do one guy, and you're get over it.
Honestly, I enjoyed seeing a guy who most people would think, yeah, that's what a Norse god really looks like, and having him being this character. And it didn't for... The thing about the way he played it, too, is he didn't for 1 second make you think that it's all about, like, he's doing this because it's, what, you know, like, the character is just this. He never let on at all. Like,
and people like Kevin exist.
Yeah.
They're real people. I have met them.
They live
Guys,
in a land.
Whatever. They are real people. Like, there are people that are that level. And you know what? God bless you, or whatever you want to bless you, or no blessings on you, whatever, however you want to read that. There is one character, though, that Did they reveal that in the trailers? This one here?
Oh yeah, he was in the trailers.
There's a character.
Let him have his moment.
There's a character that comes back, and now I'll segue into this with a little thing. I've heard people complain, "What's with the dragon ghost? What's the dragon ghost at the concert? What is that?
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a person who's dead." Blah 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 blah. You know who else didn't look like a person who was dead in the original movie?
Yeah.
Slimer.
And he's back.
He's back.
He's back for the trifecta.
For anyone who's complaining about the digital effects versus the practical effects of the original, I think he looks better than ever. I love the practical effects in the first movie. They were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think digital effects have been able to push things to a different level. And Slimer works a lot better, I think, visually.
Yeah.
And you know, he fits more into a more believable whatever.
I'd say, like, there's that one thing that I pointed out to you earlier that I felt I didn't like as a joke. And then, for me, the only cameo that I was kind of like, was Slimer. I'll admit that. And the only reason there for me was it felt like you dealt with Bill Murray showing up. You dealt with, they had a nod to Harold Ramis, which was a nice nod. And I love that it was only on the screen for all of maybe a second to 2 seconds. And if you caught it, you're like, oh, cool. Dan Aykroyd is in it. And actually, his is probably my second favorite cameo. Ernie Hudson is back. Annie Potts is back. And they all have, and Sigourney Weaver. They all have their moments. But for me, I guess it was Slimer that kind of pushed me into, I didn't need Slimer. I kind of wish they didn't have Slimer because I felt like I wanted to have them have their own versions of ghosts rather than have the mascot for the original guys in this one. But yeah, visually it was fun to see him as a digital character this time around at least. And he's got way more of a moment in the movie than I would have expected since he does what he does to the girls and he ends up joyriding quite a bit and whatnot. And so that's, I mean, it's okay, but for me that was one of the few moments that it kind of felt a little like, okay, this is a little too much now for me in respect to the originals, I guess. But the thing is, when we talked about the first Ghostbusters, the review we did a couple weeks ago, I was talking about how, you know, for the 1980s, the way that they did the story was simple. And it wasn't simplistic, it was simple, and it wasn't trying to complicate the plot by, oh, well, Walter Peck is really a minion of Gozer, or, you know, they didn't have to fight the terror dogs on the rooftop because they were just there to protect Gozer or whatever. And, you know, I was thinking of the ways that this would go and be this heightened thing, and the fact that these, the guys themselves didn't have really like a character arc. They kind of, they learned, they built their equipment after getting kicked out of university, they moved on. This, and this is going to sound completely stupid by the way I'm going to say it, but this is what a 2016 Ghostbusters movie would be. And there's character arcs. I mean, every single girl in the movie has an arc of some sort. Yeah. They each have their moment. They each have, like in the case of Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, I like that in this one I got to experience the other side of the coin for a Ghostbusters movie. You got to understand why the characters are doing what they're doing here. Whereas in the original it wasn't even, they didn't give you a reason, it was just these three scientists just kind of ended up liking
they just happened to be into the same thing.
And they got into the same thing, and then they ended up having almost like a idea that maybe we could do this and be like exterminators or whatever and provide this service and whatnot. And in this one, they went into Erin being a girl who, her story is the next door neighbor who was a really mean lady, passed away, and every night for, I forget how long, like a year or something, she's there at the foot of her bed at night, and it was like, you know, that creeped her out. And the only person at school that believed her was Abby, played by Melissa McCarthy. And so the two of them bonded over the fact that she had this experience. And Abby is one of those characters that she is herself and doesn't make any apologies about it. And I love that. That's why she's probably my second favorite out of the 4 of them at this point. She doesn't care who doesn't believe her. She doesn't care about hardly anything, because her whole thing is, this is important to me, and this is something that you might not believe it, but there's proof, and I have these reasons why I believe it to be what it is. And I like that there's that initial bonding between the two of them, like in the little story they tell over pizza, and you move on from there, and you kind of have that, okay, there's a foundation for these characters then. So that was completely absent from the first go-round of the Ghostbusters franchise, and I love that they did that. The ending of the movie is almost what I was saying about them having to fight the terror dogs, if they had to go there, where then it becomes an action movie. And I love the fact that it became an action movie, because you never saw that up until this point. No Ghostbusters movie until this point has any kind of action sequence that's more than the guy standing there all pretty much side by side, almost like the old Rules of War or whatever. You know, they'd line up, they'd shoot, and then they'd sit down, and then the other guys would come up behind. That's kind of the Ghostbusters version of an action sequence from the originals. And now we have sequences where, like, the girls are out in the street and they're grabbing a ghost with a proton wand, and they're throwing the ghost into another ghost. And one quick thing, and I promise I'll stop, is if you played the game, if you played the 2008 or 2009 video game, and you're a fan of the franchise and whatnot, you can't tell me you haven't seen that happen. And that's something that really bugs me in some of the reviews I was hearing, is they're saying, well, they're grabbing them and they're just throwing them, and it's like, oh, they're doing this. Well, it's like in the video game, you're grabbing them and holding them in the capture field, and then you're hitting them against the wall to make the ghosts wear down enough that they're going to stay in one place to trap them. Why is this a problem for some people? I mean, maybe they didn't play the game and it's what it is, but to me, it's like, that's already been introduced into the idea of the universe. Therefore, I'm not complaining about it. It actually made me smile and go, I played the game. I know how that works. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I love that they had the action in this one. I love that they had the character building in it and stuff. It's the 2016 Ghostbusters versus the way it was original.
Yeah, and I mean, just if you think,
if
they were able to have made the 1984 movie with even half of the technology they have now, I'm pretty sure they probably would have made some of the, at least similar choices with the way things went. It's just they were limited by how much they could move this stuff around, because like we said, those are practical effects. They're harder to integrate, you know, the green screen ghosts back then into the live action footage, you know, because like I don't know if I've seen it, but like, you know, Slimer he wasn't like actually on set. He was like
was
layered in.
Yeah, you could see through him for each shot that they did with him, and he was just a giant puppet.
Yeah,
basically,
and
for both movies.
You know, so green screen was around back in 1984 too.
Yeah.
They just used different ways to layer this stuff in and everything, and I think the effects are great. I've seen some people complaining about the green and blue mist surrounding them, so everything just looks like it's connected, or amorphous or whatever. Like, if you're paying attention, the green and the blue mist or whatever, like the clouds, like that's where the ghosts are coming from. It's like this energy that's roiling up out of the earth, and it shoots up into the sky and all that. I mean, that's where these things are coming from. It's like they're supposed to be connected to it. Like, that's why it looks that way. I didn't think that was anything to even be remotely concerned about. And it adds like this cool layer of, like, I don't know, there's, for me, ghosts, that whole vibe, if there's like fog at night or it's misty out or whatever, like that kind of helps enhance the spooky feeling of it. Like, if it was just clear bright day and you've got these ghosts flying around, it would look totally cheesy.
Well, also the thing I appreciated about the effects for the ghosts was, in my opinion, it was the nod back to the 80s, because in the 80s you had a lot of the fluorescent colors back then, and the really hot colors, like it would be hot pink. It wasn't just pink; it was hot pink and things like that. So that was like their way of nodding at the original material in some ways. At least that's the way I took it.
Sure.
Plus, To be honest, I mean, I really enjoyed the new look of the Ghost. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's like Scooby-Doo movies now and stuff," or Nickelodeon slime and all that. And it's like, I don't care, because the thing that I look for in a reboot, or the thing I look for in any kind of reimagining, usually is show me something that couldn't have been done with the first one.
Right.
And in the case of the Ghosts, I like that they had practical people in the costumes for a lot of these ghosts, and they would CGI aspects of it, but for the most part, they lit them where they were lit on set, and they were actually there. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, one of my favorite ones was the first ghost they run into that's on the trailer, the girl.
Gertrude?
Yeah, the girl in the mansion. And like the minute that she showed up and they have that close-up of her face looking at them, and then Melissa McCarthy's like, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." I actually thought the same damn thing, because she really, truly looked spectral, yet real, yet...
Well, it's almost like the scene from Raiders.
Oh,
when the ghost
when they come out of the ark and all that.
Like, he's like, "Oh, it's so beautiful," and then its face melts off, and they're like,
"Yeah." And you're right. I didn't even put that together, but you're right.
Like, I don't think it was intentionally meant to be like a nod to that or anything, but it had
no,
that same
but it's
kind
a
of
good
vibe
reference point. It's a great reference point to show, like, here's this nice thing, and then it just does something horrible right at humans.
And another complaint I heard a lot is about the villain. The villain was not very well developed. I'm like, again, if you're paying attention and you're not twittering about how horrible the movie is, and you're actually paying attention to what's going on, I think they give you plenty enough of a backstory for the villain. Now, it's not his movie, it's not his arc, but they give you enough to, I thought, explain why, and then, like, as each kind of reveal of him, you get a little bit more, and, like, how it all ties together, I think I mean, could it have been more developed? Probably, but so could just about every villain in every movie ever written.
Yeah, I mean, this one, how do I want to put this? This one, to me, in reference to that Scooby-Doo thing that I mentioned earlier, I didn't mean to go there right away, but it did feel almost like this one is the Ghostbusters version of a Scooby-Doo villain, in a sense. Because now you have a villain where it's like, "I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling women and your proton packs," or whatever. But it didn't come off like that, to be honest, because by the time that they have that moment where they find him in the basement of the hotel, and they're trying to, like, stop. And I love another thing too. Quick is, I love how the Ghostbusters aren't these, like, charlatan kind of characters that the society is like, "Well, we don't know about those guys. They're the crazy scientist guy." This one, they're working with the mayor. They're working with the government in here right off the bat. And I love how the minute they find him and he's trying to unleash his evil plan, that Abby actually says the cops are on the way, and they're trying to take him in to try to stop him from doing something worse. And I, for some reason, that moment just clicked for me as, like, I love that they're now, like, a city servant sort of character, which they never could make him get to that point in the other movies again.
Even though the city would never acknowledge.
Yeah, and I love that they constantly are bashing these women, and I love there's that moment in there where I think we talked about that before too, where the whole premise of the villain is he's someone who's been bullied, and he's someone who feels like society has turned their back on him, and they look at him as this crazy person. Nobody wants to deal with him and whatnot unless they absolutely have to. And he, "Oh, you're gonna pay," and all this stuff. And I like that on the other side of the coin, you do have the team of Ghostbusters, and they're basically, like, "Buddy, you think you got crapped on? We get crapped on every day." I mean, that's kind of the line that Melissa McCarthy said.
I think it's interesting because, like, they both kind of had, the villain and the girls have similar backstories as to why they got to where they are. They just made different choices of how they were going to use what they were passionate about, and I think that's a very black and white layout for choices all of us have in life. I mean, I know I got picked on in high school and middle school and stuff all the time for being into the comic books and all the stuff I was into, and 25 years later I'm still doing it, and at least one of you is watching this video, I'm sure.
To quote the first X-Men cartoon show, "You're lucky I had dandruff. Which I did. It's no way around it. I had dandruff and an afro. Deal with it. But, no, something else that I like, too, going back to the villain really quick, is I like that the villain actually was using something that Abby and Aaron both created as a way of showing this is something that it exists, and this is it was their 400 some page book.
It was 473.
Yeah, something like that. It was a book they both created about ghosts, and Aaron. Kristen Wiig's character, Erin, she's very much like, I didn't do anything.
She tries
that.
to distance herself from that because
she's
trying to be a legitimate tenured professor.
And in the case of Abby, she wears it on her sleeve, and it's like, I want to be somebody that's not the ghost hunters because I know that this stuff is real, and those guys are the frauds out there and whatnot. And I like that they had the villain using their book as a way of showing, they figured this stuff out, so I'm going to use what they're talking about in this book, and I'm going to find a way to bring forth power that will now make me feel like a bigger person. So I like that angle of the story quite a lot, and I might be reading more into it than not, but I really thought that was cool where, the heroes provided the villain with the means to do what he has to do in the end of the movie.
There's also a good little segue, again, I think we've mentioned this in other videos at least once before, is like, don't be a bully.
Yeah, it's not
There's
cool.
no.
You end up like me, you're bald at the end of the day, because if you're a bully, these are the people that you have at the end of the day. I'm bald. Yeah. Jerk. No, I'm sorry, you were actually making a legitimate point. I turned it into a farce.
Stop and think about what you say, and especially if you're responding to people online, you have no idea who's sitting on the other end of that keyboard. So if you can't say it in person, don't say it online.
Yeah. And that goes for a lot of people bad-mouthing this movie to me, because there are people that are they're flat out like declaring they're calling the women in this movie horrible names. They're actually saying they want to do horrible things to the women because they're ruining their childhood and whatnot. There are so many things in this world right now, this very moment, that are so much more worth the attention of being angry about than a movie that is created in order for Sony to have a new franchise based on a title of a movie series that made a decent amount of money in the 80s and is held and cherished by people in their 30s and 40s right now. But there's so much more worse out in this world other than Sony doing this right now. And Paul Feig being the director of it and whatnot. Give me a freaking break. I mean, this is, I'm not trying to be a social justice warrior here, but, I mean, geez, really? This is what fans are resorting to now, that they want to start having death threats and calling women horrible things and confirming misogyny issues with people.
Look, the very fact that Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, to me, the very fact that all of them agreed to even be in this movie, to me, was an endorsement of their belief in the film. Especially when you see Bill Murray's character. I know we talked about this, and without giving that away, him playing the role he did in the way that he did, to me, was kind of taking one for the team. I don't know if that's the right way to put that, but kind of, because I'll just say, he doesn't play a likable character in the movie, really. And I think the fact that he was willing to go to that level of a character for this movie, to me, that was showing his support. Now, I might be completely wrong, but that's what I took from it. Because he definitely has the largest cameo. Yeah. So seeing that he was able to give that much screen time and stuff to it, to be that character for this new team, and the new direction, everything going with it, to me, if he didn't believe in it, he could have easily just been like, "No, I don't want to do that."
Well, that's part of why he never signed on for a third movie. Every time, the script's not right, or he doesn't want to do it, and the fact that he did show up to do this one actually was pretty shocking, for the fact that they got him to do it.
And remember, this is also Bill Murray. Like, I love Bill Murray, but he also did 2 Garfield movies.
Yeah, and don't forget, and
for whatever they are, they're not world-class movies. No offense to Breckin Meyer and what's her face?
Jennifer Love Hewitt.
That one.
Yeah, I actually know that one. Yeah.
But anyway,
I mean, Zombieland proved that he had regrets about that. I think so. You haven't seen that one, I'm guessing.
It's been a while since I've seen it. I don't.
Well, when he's about to die in that one, and they're like, "Do you have any regrets?" He goes, "Maybe Garfield," and then he passes away right after that.
That's right.
But
so that's to me a shining endorsement of their belief in this movie, and the fact that pretty much everybody came back except for Rick Moranis. But I mean, he's pretty much retired and doing his own thing.
He's one of the few holdouts that said he didn't feel they needed to remake it. But the thing is, again, it wasn't a remake,
and it wasn't. I mean, as much as you might, no offense, Rick Moranis, but your character, I'm okay with him not being in this. Like for me, Lewis was kind of just that funny kind of side character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he played into the end and everything, but you know, but yeah, with the all three of the surviving main guys, Sigourney Weaver, who else?
I actually liked I liked Dan Aykroyd's cameo because I honestly think that he wasn't really meant to be on the set that day. He just was driving a taxi. Because like the thing about that one that I loved more than the others was the fact that he pulls up in his scene. He pulls up to Kristen Wiig's character Erin, and she's trying to get to Chinatown where their base is. He's like, I'm not going there, it's too far down. And she's like, can you not tell that there's problems? You know, there's ghosts all over. Oh, they're just class 4 apparitions, it's no problem. And I'm like, it sounds like it's really not, like he's not playing a role. He actually believes this is happening right now.
And, you know, so I'll say, it's a fun movie. So all these critics, we're not critics, we're just two schmucks in a basement talking to a camera about stuff we like. And, you know, sure, we could probably get a lot more attention or whatever if we were constantly bad-mouthing everything we saw. But we go to these movies because we like them. We went to Batman v Superman because we wanted it to be a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It just... It wasn't.
It didn't deliver on any level except for Wonder Woman.
I feel like we gave a pretty good explanation as to why we didn't like it and why it didn't work overall for us. And, you know, with all the other movies, it's like, yeah, every movie's got problems. I don't believe there is such a thing as a perfect movie. Mm-hmm. I've said in my review, like Warcraft, I haven't done my Tarzan review yet, but I will. Those both skew higher, in my opinion, because it's like sword and sorcery fantasy movie, and then, you know, a guy in a jungle in Africa, which, I mean, I love George of the Jungle, and that's not really going to go down in the history books as one of Hollywood's, you know, standout movies.
Time will tell on that.
But those movies always skew a little higher for me, despite any flaws they might have. And I'll acknowledge they have flaws. But, you know, Ghostbusters, yeah, is there maybe some things we could really nitpick about this movie? Sure.
Yeah.
But we went in, I know we both laughed through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was entertaining. I know at least once or twice, we both have the habit of leaning forward when we're getting into a scene or something. And I know at least twice we both like sat forward, like synchronized swimming.
Yeah, it was.
And it's, you know, our one friend Andrew watches movies with us. Like he'll sit there and count how many times both of us sit forward during a movie because.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, you get to hear. There's moments in the movie where you hear a variation of the Ghostbusters theme. And for me, it just kicks in the whole idea of me remembering how it was when I was a kid. You hear that theme song, and you hear the noise when the proton packs light up, and you're like, something great's about to happen here. It's the blue collar equivalent of Superman ripping the shirt open and the S is underneath for me. And in this movie, they do many moments like that, and they do them more heroically at points than even the guys did in certain parts of their movie, which I like. I like that they had equipment that was different than the guys. I like that they had like grenades in this one. I like that they had they had a proton shotgun she was trying to make, and some of the, and I like that the equipment is different enough looking to look even more like utilitarian than the original movie's equipment in certain ways. And I don't know. I enjoyed it immensely for what it brought to a franchise that now, I mean, the 1980s '89 version, it's coming up on being 30 years old itself pretty soon. And since then there's been the cartoons and there's been the video games, but there hasn't been anything to inject an energy or life into it the way that this movie has done. And I liked it. I liked, they're tossing around their science language, and they did that even more than they did in the original movies.
And again, especially Holtzman, she's just rattling
her
all this stuff off.
Her and Abby, they both were just boom, 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 boom.
They just
rapid fire
stuff, and it was cool watching Kristen, because we already said that she starts off, she's 10 years, she's trying to distance herself from this past, but she very quickly gets pulled right back into it, and it's kind of like that friend of yours that maybe was into comics when you were kids or whatever, and then suddenly they're like, oh, what's this? I heard DC Rebirth, that sounds interesting. Oh wait, suddenly, and they're walking out with an armful of comic. It's like,
and, she's embracing herself. She was trying to conform to other people's ideas of her, and she was even like, about her suit and all that to the professor, to the dean or whoever, and it's like this was her finally embracing the fact she's Ghost Girl. That was her nickname that they were picking on her with as a kid.
And I love that they were able to be a little bit meta about the critiques the movie was getting in the story of the movie, because part of the plot is they're obviously they become public. Everybody's got cell phones and whatever, so like everybody sees them go out to do their first test or whatever. And then, all this stuff happens, and there's people commenting online, and they're like, there ain't no girls catching no ghosts. I'm censoring the language, because that's...
That was actually, I almost clapped there,
I don't know
I
if
just
it
loved
was,
that they went there. And
I don't know if it was a direct quote from some commenter online, for real, about the movie. It very well could have been, but it's just, if it was, it probably was one of the more mild ones.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I like that in that they kind of like, go ahead, throw the jokes at us, we can take it. You know why? Because they made something good that they believed in, and I'm 100% behind this movie. I say, go see it twice. I've heard the 3D is pretty cool because they filmed in letterbox, so when the proton packs shoot off the screen, it actually goes lower.
Yeah, and the ghosts actually come out of the screen a bit because of that.
The way,
the aspect ratio or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, the other thing about it too is if there's people out there who are this caveman centric to worry that this movie is going to be feeding them and inundating them with feminism, it's not even an issue in this movie. That's something that I thought was awesome too, is it's not a movie that's trying to defend feminism. It's not a movie that's trying to even be a feminist statement or anything. It's just, here's 4 women. That's it. It's not trying to have any kind of an issue or an agenda any further than they found 4 female comedians that worked really well. They gelled. They have a great chemistry, all 4 of them together. And by the end of the movie, I'm sitting there going like, I want to go on more adventures with these girls. And I don't feel bad that, most of the time in the movie, they do make a few jabs here and there at guys, but how many freaking times have guy movies done that to women?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously,
and to be completely honest,
we have a comeuppance here,
And the jabs they make, I'm not at all offended by.
No.
Because you could have very easily had men in the roles making the same jokes. And like, they don't come across... The only reason you could even possibly remotely say they were sexist is because it was girls delivering them, or women delivering the lines.
Sure.
There's a scene with the stage manager at the concert talking about the type of scream he has. If this had been like, if Bill Murray and the other guys had been there, they could have delivered the exact same lines to him that the girls did without it. And there's the whole thing. We're gonna say about the pot shot at the end.
That didn't bother me either. If you want to go there, go for it.
Okay, again, one of the jokes at the end is they've got to distract a bad guy by shooting it in the crotch. Now this is a ghost, so again, the guys could have very easily done the same thing with the same planned results.
In the first movie, they're like, well, if we get them laid, we're fine. I mean, that was their method going into that battle.
Right. So it's like, and there's tons of movies where these same things are done by male characters, same types of jokes, same types of things, and no one bats an eye.
Yeah.
So for those people who are complaining about those things, you just, go get some ice cream and nurse that wound or whatever.
It's the whole thing to me of, if you're somebody that harbors the issue, you're going to find the problem with it, but that's your problem. It's not this movie's problem, and it's not an issue of any kind of agenda that the studio or the director or the actors are pushing on you or the writers are pushing on you. It's your problem, and you're missing out then. That's the best thing I could say. And I want to take a quick soapbox moment of my own here, and then I'm good to go as far as my review. But last week, my daughter, Jessie was over, my daughter wanted to watch Superman, the Chris Reeve Superman. So we watched that, and Jessie got to see it for the first time. We're going to do a review on that at some point soon, hopefully, too. And Jessie got to see it for the first time. My daughter got to see it for probably the 5th or 6th time in her life to this point. And after Jessie left, my wife and I had a little discussion about the idea that, superhero movies and the kind of movies that I enjoy, and even my wife enjoys at times, they are so male-centric in showing the damsel in distress, that women are the ones that need to be rescued, or the women doesn't play the title role in a way. And I kind of just stood there and took it, and I'm like, there's not much I can really argue with you for, because at this point, there's a Wonder Woman movie coming next year. There's, a Captain Marvel movie coming a little while off too. But for the movies that I enjoyed, that I love to share with my daughter, yeah, they're very male-centric. I mean, geez, there's Superman, there's the Flash TV show she enjoys, but again, another male-centric show in that way. The original Ghostbusters, even Ninja Turtles and stuff. So, going into this movie, watching this, I was sitting there getting giddy over just the fact that this is a movie that I honestly, I can't wait to own a copy of this movie. I want to watch it again. I want to actually, I could go again this weekend or next weekend. I'd love to see it again, because there was so much going on that it made me want to watch it again. And there's an enjoyment factor I'm sure it's going to be replay value for anybody who loves this movie. But for me, it's just awesome to go, like, this is my chance, the first chance I have in my daughter's life to go, now you get to watch this, and here's a bunch of girls taking care of business, and it doesn't need to be any more than that. It's the girls' chance to get in there and play with the guys. And I love this movie for just that alone, and I don't care what people think, if I'm going to be one of these people that they're going to give crap to because I'm looking at it from 2 points of view. But the whole purpose sometimes of franchises, and the whole purpose sometimes of the movies being these movies that we enjoy, is if you're going to keep them going, you have to pass them to a generation and the generation's sensibilities. This generation, they need women heroes. Every generation needed a woman hero. Unfortunately, we're only advanced enough now to start getting to those moments where we're having these big movies around women characters. And, for me, that's more than enough to go, like, Star Wars started the ball rolling with Rey being the main character and having her being such a huge part of that mythology now. And she's now who she is. And there's such an uproar over the lack of toys and all that stuff in the last year. And now here we are in Ghostbusters. There are 4 girl action figures in the boy aisles. How cool is that? It's time, and just from a father's perspective, that's my father's soapbox of this review. But I love the fact that they had the guts to go here, and I love the fact that none of the haters turned them away from doing the movie that they made, and it's a freaking fun movie. And it's the most fun I had watching a movie since Deadpool. I mean, I haven't done a review on that one yet, but I mean, Deadpool for me was such an enjoyable movie because it was just different, and it was full of fun, tons of laughing from me, tons of just over the topness, and this movie rivals it. And it's actually a little better because there's a lack of swearing that I can actually show it to my daughter, and a lack of violence too. So.
And I'll kind of piggyback off of, not the Deadpool part, but like you were saying with the female characters, like, yeah, I mean, my favorite comic book character going back almost 30 years now, 25 years now, is Rogue of the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even back then, I always joked that I'd like to see like a female version of Wolverine.
And
now we've got
someone listened.
So it's like I like seeing these. And Wonder Woman's my favorite DC character. You know, I really, you know, so I love reading and seeing stories about interesting female characters. I like the guy characters too. It's like there's something in any well-told story, whether it's a male character, a female character, black, white, whatever, that if it's a hero character, not necessarily a superhero, but if it's a character that is supposed to be admirable and looked up to, there are traits you can see in them that you can either identify with or wish you could be. You know, and for me, and that's not to, I'm not trying to like cancel out what you're saying about the need for female characters. We definitely need more female characters. We definitely need all of that. But it's like, you know, I Rey's my favorite character out of the new Star Wars movies because it's just the child coming from nothing, finding out there's more to the life, and that she just wants to find her family. Like that's her drive, and she wants to do the right thing. Like that's something that appeals to me. And in Ghostbusters, you know, these girls, the new one with the girls, they just want to kind of validate what they've always believed. You know, that kind of echoes back to, you know, us being nerds and geeks or whatever about comics and stuff in high school and middle school. There's things, and they don't have to be guys for me to see that in it. You know, they don't have to be me in order for me to be able to identify and look up to these characters. You know, I watched 42 a couple of years ago, the Jackie Robinson story. I wish I had half the class that guy had. I mean, that is just an incredible story. I mean, I know it's a Hollywood, you know, dramatization of a real person's life story, but there's elements of truth to all those things. And, you know, when I see those things, and it doesn't matter that he was a black baseball player, those are good qualities to strive for in your life. So I think it depends on how well the story is told and made. You can get that point across no matter what to whoever. And it's up to us as viewers to be open to these things and not need necessarily to see your identical reflection in the character you're seeing. So this is more addressing the majority of male commentators I'm seeing online complaining about the female-centric movie. It's like, there's amazing qualities in all of this cast that's worth looking up to. The friendship, the heroism, the self-sacrifice. Like, there's a moment when you were telling me what you thought, or you had read what could possibly have been the Ghostbusters 3 thing. And I know this is things you've talked about in other movies, like Incredibles, when Mr. Fantastic is about ready to charge into the building on fire. It's like, you know, it's that moment of the hero not having no fear, but knowing they need to step up. And he does that kind of like pause moment. He like kind of shuffles his feet and takes off. When you were telling me the possible, or a script, suppose whatever, where you know everybody's running from the center of the city, and then all of a sudden the Ghostbusters just show up and they're running into it or whatever. There's almost that moment in this movie, and I almost like got to nudge you, but they kind of cut the camera away before it actually happened. But and it's really cool. It's just, you know, it was Erin's character. She's separated from the other girls because she was trying to.
She's
trying to warn the mayor and everything, and she's trying to get back to her equipment. The other girls had already gone in, and so it's like everyone else is running away, and she just sees this nightmare hellscape, and she's like, I gotta get there. You know, it's like, it doesn't matter what gender, what race, whatever you are. Like, that's like, yeah, I gotta be there and help my friends do this unstoppable thing. Whether we make it or not, we've got to give everything we have.
Well,
that's there.
To piggyback that really quick, it's the whole, like, there's a moment in it where one of the Ghostbusters actually does end up sacrificing herself in order for them to capture the big bad at the end. And Erin has another moment in that part where she doesn't even think twice.
Yeah, no hesitation.
And she just jumps headlong into this vortex that's about to close. It's sort of like the ending of Avengers, with Tony trying to get the nuke into space and whatnot. And it's a tender moment, and it's a badass moment for my money. And, you know, like, it's time girls got the chance to do these moments. And you know, and I like... just like in the first Ghostbusters, this one too, it echoes. None of these women are set up to be like superheroes. They're not like buff, and they're not this or that. They're just average looking women. People. And, you know, everyday people that you might see on the street. And I love that just shows, you know, these are smart women who got the ability to do what they do through their brains and through their can-do spirit and their tenacity. And the fact that you add in their bravery and self-sacrifice, you got me. I'm awesome with this. I'm a huge fan. And like I said, my rating is I want to own a copy of this. I want to, if I can, I want to go see it one more time in the theater. And I'm having a hard enough time trying to go like, why are people hating this as much as they do? The only thing I can think of is they're just expecting the first two movies again. And again, I said this is the 2016 version of it. They're not going to remake the old style storytelling that the first one's introduced. Star Wars proved that.
Yeah, and Jurassic World did it last year.
Jurassic World too. That's right.
Yeah, that one actually, you know, carries on the story of the original movie. But I think it delivers a sequel that neither Lost World nor Jurassic Park 3 could. And I think part of that is the timing and the characters, and it's a commentary in and of itself between the two movies. Sure. And I love that. And I think this movie does the same thing. I had as much fun watching this. Well, I might have had a little bit more fun watching Jurassic Park because, you know, movies with dinosaurs is kind of like Africa and sword and sorcery. It's going to get pushed a little higher up. Unless I want to call that demon ghost thing you know, winged velociraptor, and then that can push this up into the same level. But I'm on the same boat with Sean. I love the movie. I'm glad we went out and saw it. You know, opening night, I would happily go see it again. You know, at least try to see it in 3D, possibly. Definitely going to be a purchase down the road. And you know, unless it's someone who I know just doesn't enjoy bright, colorful movies full of action, humor, and fun, I will tell you to go see it. It's definitely, like Sean said, one of the most enjoyable movies of the year for me. It's probably third place for me this year, behind Warcraft, and then Tarzan and Civil War are kind of tied at second place. So, but this is, and it's very close to second place for me.
I'd actually have to say this is in my top 3 of 2016 out of all the movies I got to see, and I make no apologies about that. And I love the fact, and you know, it's if you even had an inkling from watching the trailers and said, maybe. Go, do it. Do yourself a favor. I was lucky enough to see online this weekend that there's so many people out there going, I saw it, I loved it, it was so much better than I expected. And I'm not saying go in with lowered expectations, but just go in there with an open mind. That's all that I'm trying to say, because, you know, you're not going to recapture lightning in a bottle like how the first one worked.
No.
They didn't. They proved in the second one they can't recapture that feeling. It turned into the first one, regurgitated in a sense. This one, at least, you have nods to the first one, but it goes and does its own thing, and I love the fact that it did that, because now I really and genuinely am sitting here going, I want to know what they do next.
Yeah.
And if you don't, the end credits.
Yeah, I was gonna say, stay through till the very end, like an Avengers movie, all the way till the end, to where you're almost afraid they're gonna kick you out of the theater. After, you know, stay to the end. There's something there, and I've already seen that there's talk from one of the higher ups, you know, that a sequel is going to happen.
I hope so. I would enjoy seeing them again.
You know, I think that's more of a comment than an actual promise from the studio at this point, but I know it performed better than the studio expected. For some reason, The Secret Life of Pets is doing better, but I think, you know, because there's been such a drought of really good family-centric younger movies, that I think that might be the boast, especially with all the negative press that online people have been giving Ghostbusters, but it's definitely worth going out to see.
Mm-hmm.
If money's tight, go check a matinee. It's worth seeing in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or a drive-in. If one of my coworkers at my part-time job saw it at the drive-in, and I heard they absolutely loved it too. So,
sure.
So get there, get out and see it. Take some friends. It's definitely one that I think if you've got people you can go see it with, then you can talk about it. Like, oh, you know, because there's some movies that are just more fun when you can talk with a group of people afterwards. And this is definitely one of those kind of event movies.
Sure. And
that you'll be able to be like, yeah, remember when we saw that? It was a lot of fun. Blah, blah, blah. And that's what this movie is. It's a lot of fun.
It's infectious energy. Because like after we left the theater, I actually was like grinning like an idiot and going like, I want to talk about this. Oh my god! And Jeremy, who did the after review the other night, he was the same way, and so was this guy. And I wasn't going in there going, I hope this fails. I went in there going, just show me what you got, and they delivered, and they delivered more than I expected, and I'm good to go. And I mean that's, if I say any more, I'm just gonna want to act out the whole movie. So I'm not going to be.
You will. He was making sound effects earlier.
Yes, and if I had my proton pack, I would. But unfortunately, it's at my mother's.
Yeah.
So
anyway, that's the Beardy and the Baldy review for Ghostbusters 2016.
Yes.
Go check it out. It is worth it.
And don't forget, we are ready to believe you. And you. And you. I don't know about that guy. That guy back no.
This one?
No, the other, that guy.
This one?
That one.
This one.
That guy.
This one?
He is
this
just,
one?
he does not look
this one
right at all.
Oh, camera. This guy?
This guy. That's just too damn cute. Oh dear Lord. On that note,
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
I'm Batman. See you next time.
Cross-contamination.